Welcome to Adulting in the Modern World with Donna and Sahar, a podcast dedicated to help women catalyze their own transformation and engage in their evolution in a conscious way. Two transformational coaches share tools, processes, practices, and wisdom to support you in designing your life in a fun, joy-filled, and abundant way. This is for the woman who is invested in her evolution in an intentional way, takes responsibility for her emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, and financial wellness. This is for the woman that honors the value of wisdom and growth in community. Welcome to Adulting in the Modern World. Let's begin by taking 3 deep breaths. We're going to take these 3 breaths together every time we meet on this podcast. Take a deep breath in and breathe to connect to the cosmos. Hold the breath and gently exhale. Take another deep breath in. Hold the breath, connecting now to your heart. And gently exhale. And take one more deep breath in. Hold the breath and connect to the earth. Gently exhale.
Hi, and welcome to our episode today. We are going to be talking about the power of stories. And the reason for it is because stories is how we basically live our identities inside of. And so we're very excited to talk about how we have come to understand the power of stories in our work and our lives, and why it matters for us as transformational coaches. And we're also going to talk about the fact that at this time in life, in the year 2021, we really are at a place where a lot of the old stories are dying. Things that used to be what held society and culture and things like that in place and in ground are now under destruction, under evolution, under transformation. And so, especially as women, our role right now is to find a way to be sustainable in the midst of all this transformation and in the midst of this catalyst that's happening, and still be able to open up our visionary eye, our visionary heart, and be able to dream and tell the new stories that we want to have surfacing back up. It's just like when, for forest fires, when they intentionally burn things, the slash and burn method, you have to burn away the old, you have to slash away the old, and then all of a sudden the new seeds and the new plants start to grow. And so Donna and I are going to be exploring that conversation together and why it matters for us as transformational coaches in terms of talking about the importance of story, being aware of the power of it, and being the author inside of your own life so that you can draft stories for yourself that resonate with who you are now and who you're becoming, as well as the world that you desire to live in, and how you're going to basically shape and change that the areas and spaces and relationships around you by making those internal changes as well. So Donna, what's your relationship with stories, storytelling? How does it show up for you in your practice, in your professional practice, as well as your personal life?
Great question, Sahar. Thank you. And it's a huge part of what I do. And I would say professionally, at one point when I was training full time, I was a personal trainer full time. It's one of my incarnations. Um, Power of story was huge in terms of how I trained my clients and how they came to me. And what do I mean by that? It was oftentimes a story that brought the client to me, that brought the client to the trainer that wanted to lose weight, they wanted to reshape their body, they wanted to feel different and better about themselves. They wanted to change their story, change their narrative so they can leave the old and go into a new persona, a new way of being, a new shift in their reality. And story played a huge role in that because a lot of times, you mentioned women, and a lot of the people we're speaking to are women. We have these stories in our minds of who we think we are. And, if I relate it to weight, speaking as, when I was a personal trainer, weight played a huge role because a woman's mind, let's say, in my client's mind, she would relate herself to how much she weighed or how she looked in the mirror or how she felt about her body. And so that story would become a loop, and it would loop into many other areas of her life as well. And perhaps the story would become, I want to be in a relationship, but I don't feel good about myself. And so I also, have a lot of extra pounds, and therefore I don't feel good about myself. And so, I indulge in the unhealthy food, and I'm not going to work out, and therefore I'm not going to meet anybody. And so these stories would loop and loop in their minds. And so when they would come and seek help, we'd have to really shift those stories, because otherwise, no matter how much great training you do and how much weight training and how much nutrition, the body may change slightly, but the stories will always come back and take over unless we command them, unless we manage them, unless we learn how to navigate them. And one of the things I want to touch on today, and I hope it comes up a little later on when we're speaking, is how we can actually change the way we remember our stories. But first, let's touch on one rule of the mind that we spoke about last week, which I think plays perfectly into this topic. And these are some of the rules of the mind that Marissa Peer speaks about. Marissa Peer is a world-renowned therapist and hypnotherapist, and she's made leaps and bounds in terms of progress in terms of the world of hypnotherapy, and created her own training called Rapid Transformational Therapy. And I mention this also because I'm a part of that training and starting to see clients in that realm. And it's incredible how connected we are as humans with our stories. And so one of the rules of the mind is that the mind responds to the images that we make and the words that we use. Okay. And so what is that? Pictures and words. That's the story. And so we create these narratives, and our mind latches onto them, and it wants to understand them, and it wants to react to them, because the mind is such a powerful mechanism that it will react and respond to the pictures and the words that you use. And so it's beyond just visualization, because, if I can have a client sit down and visualize the perfect body, and then in, a day or two or a week, they have the perfect body, well, that would almost be too easy. But we have to change and shift how we speak to ourselves, how we think, and incorporate the images that we have in our mind. And all of that will help to shift slowly with time, with patience, and with perseverance, because the mind really works with repetition. We need to repeat over and over and over again, whether it's 21 days of repetition, 40 days of repetition. You'll hear us speaking about these numbers a lot, whether it's 60 or 90 days, because at the 90-day mark is when it actually becomes a part of our personality. And so Sahar and I are big proponents of 40-day practices, because that begins to shift you into a new habit. And as you continue those 40-day practices, the mind begins to habituate these new responses. And in time, in a few months' time, it actually becomes a part of your personality. And so all of this, coming back to my personal training days, played a huge role in how we shifted a woman's perspective on her body, her life, herself, her image, because we had to change the story first. And we did that through repetition. We did it through journaling and various exercises, and even physical exercises that pushed her limits. And I think that's why people go see trainers, is because if they work out at the gym by themselves, they're not going to push themselves as hard as if someone else is sitting right there beside them, standing there, and actually making them do a few more reps and making them lift a few more pounds. And I think that's one of the reasons I became a trainer, was to be able to help push people past their limits. And so let's also recognize that the mind needs that as well. The mind is a muscle. The mind needs to be exercised. And so we need to push it past the limits that we impose on it, because it's capable of so much more. Wouldn't you say, Sahar?
Absolutely. When we discussed upgrading your iOS in our episode last week, that's exactly what we were talking about. Is we were talking about the importance of exercising your mind so that it's current, it's updated, it's relevant, it's fresh, just the way that you would hope for your body, right? Like you're not going to eat something that's in the fridge that's been there for a very long time and it's all moldy and stuff like that. So you're going to make sure you throw that out and then you replace it. And it's the same with stories. Um, Ultimately, their beliefs, their ways, their patterns. And the thing about stories is that they live in each area of our life. So Donna and I share this Wheel of Life practice as part of our 40-day practice that she mentioned. And we identify, 2 stories in each of those different areas that we want to transform. And we pick them and then we create a new story to override that and overwrite it through actions, through habits, through daily practices, so that, because you can't just say, okay, I'm going to decide to change this story. I don't no longer want to believe it. I know as a child I said, making money was evil, for example, but now that I'm older I realize money is just energy and it flows, so I'm just going to believe the new belief. And voila, it changes. And all of a sudden you notice that you start sabotaging yourself when it comes to your finances, and you still don't understand the problem because you're like, wait, but I updated my iOS system, I have a different belief now. But the thing is that when we have imprinted our primary stories, they've happened on a subconscious level. And a lot of the times from 0 to 7, as mentioned on the last episode, that's where a lot of our programming really gets instilled and installed. And a lot of it isn't even our own. And a lot of it is, the child perception. So as a child, you looked at something or you tried to interpret something and then you said, okay, this equals that and therefore I don't want it. So like if money caused a lot of problems in your family, you may have thought, money and love don't go together. And so if you really want love, you may be pushing away money because you think if you have money then you may not get love. And so I wanted to really emphasize the importance of the transformational work that has to happen when we want to change our stories. It's not just thinking your way out of it. It's also about the fact that you have to make sure that you use modalities and techniques that can go into the subconscious mind. That's why we use meditation. That's why we use guided visualizations, because that allows us to drop into that theta brainwave state, which allows you to go into that limbic system so that you could rewire yourself in that deeper subconscious level. And so when Donna talks about those 40-day, 90-day, 120-day practices, that's that really, that's you restructuring your internal operating system and rewiring it. And so I also want to say, when it comes to storytelling, a lot of the times we're not aware of what stories live inside of us, and I think that that's really powerful. So Donna, what has been your way of becoming aware of some of those stories that were like living underneath the surface? Because a lot of the times we decide to say, okay, I'm going to change and I'm going to transform because it comes from a place of pain or suffering or a desire, right? So if I, for example, I'm for myself personally, I grew up in a certain situation, like in terms of, certain environment, certain context, and those stories could have really shaped me. So for example, with the identity, like, or label of I'm Afghan and I was born as a refugee, and I could have used that as a way to block myself in a lot of ways and to shape it. And we get a lot of benefits even from our negative stories. So I really want to like highlight that, is that sometimes we hold on to stories even if it no longer serves us in a present way, in a positive way. But when we made up that story at that time, it could have benefited us, or it could have been true at that time. So it's not to like, when you do become aware of some of these stories, it's not to shame yourself or judge yourself or blame yourself or anything like that. It's a lot of self-compassion, because with that awareness we want to be compassionate. And then you want to reflect on it, and in terms of seeing, okay, where did I make up this story, and how did it serve me? Because sometimes we don't let go of stories because it still continues to serve us, even if it holds us tight in a bud and it doesn't allow us to bloom more of our potential. Sometimes we're scared that there might not be something other than the story that we have. And so I can't let go of this identity. So if you're in a career where you're like, okay, I've invested 10 years in this career, this is my identity, I'm a teacher, like I can't let this go. But there's this part of you that maybe wants to do modeling, or there's this part of you that maybe, wants to do something else. We're really scared of that unraveling that happens as well. So Donna, do you have anything to share in terms of on your own path, or any client stories where, they identified themselves for so long as a certain way, and then all of a sudden they got to a wall where they're like, okay, I'm ready to let this go, but I'm scared of letting it go. And I'm not sure what's on the other side, and so I'm scared of letting it go. Like I love that stuff, because I feel it all the time with myself, and I know the edge of transformation, and some people are uncomfortable there, but I've kind of, as a transformational coach, I've gotten really comfortable to wanting to go there all the time. So
Yes, of course, when we're honest with ourselves, we all have stories. And I think it's really important, before I dive into one of them, it's really important the note that you made, because we called this the power of stories. And you made a note that these stories may be true. Like sometimes they are stories that are actually factual and they're true. Sahar, is Afghan and she's a refugee. That's a truth. But how she interprets that is another part of the story, right? So, how we make those interpretations is something else. And so, this concept of the stories in our lives and the narratives in our lives is so interesting. And so, you had me kind of giggling with myself, because it really touches deep in terms of one of my personal stories that I'll share is that in a part of my life, I became a widow, and I became a widow quite suddenly. And it turned my life upside down and inside out. And it was a truth, right? There's a fact to that, and there's a truth to that. And there's also a victim state to that, because something happened in my life and something happened to me directly, which changed the shape of all the aspects of my life. And so, in the immediate time, because I want to be really compassionate with our listeners and compassionate with myself, in the immediate time of going through that, the loss, the mourning, the upheaval of my life, financially, family life, home, you name it, business, all of the above. This role of victim played in my life, and it was very real and very true for the first year and the first 2 years and the first 3 years, and give yourself the benefit of the doubt and give it 5 years. And then after a while, because mourning does take a long time, especially when it's someone very close to you and you're dealing with all the ramifications of that. And then after a while, I would check in with myself and be like, okay, am I still a victim here? I mean, something happened in my life, yes, but as time goes on, am I still playing the victim story? And Sahar, it was such a wake up moment when I realized, after, a good amount of time and years spent mourning, that I don't need to play that role anymore. I don't need to play that card anymore. I can take the power now. Okay, and so we can all do that in various degrees and in various ways in our own lives. And I can take the power now, and I can shift my story and honor everything I went through, and now shape it the way that I want to shape it, and shape it perhaps in honor of the person I lost, and do things in honor of the life that I had and in honor of the life that I want to have. And so once I had that realization, and actually Steve Anderson, gold medal volleyball coach and business and entrepreneur coach, so I just want to plug him there, because I love his philosophy and I love what he posts online. And Steve was literally a neighbor to the studio that I owned, and so I would see him often, and he's the one that pointed it out quite early on, but I wasn't ready yet. I was still in loss and mourning, and I wasn't ready yet. But he pointed it out. And when it was time, I think it took me 2 years after he pointed it out, which he used those exact words, Donna, are you, do you want to be the victim? And I'm being really raw and real and honest here. At some point, I think it took me 2 years later to really click in and say, oh, yeah, I'm past that now. I can shift my story. And so this is where we can start to change our stories and how we shape them and how we understand them and actually be able to change our memories of them. And so this is a really key concept, is because through hypnotherapy and through the therapy that I do through RTT, rapid transformational therapy, we can actually go back and look at stories that have shaped us to now, and we can go back and actually converse in our mind, in ourselves, converse with the people involved in those stories and actually understand. And the mind wants to understand. The mind is an organism that wants to understand things. And so when we give it knowledge, it gives us power. And so that way we can actually start to reshape how we remember things. And if I change the way I remember things, then I can really shape my future in the way that I'd like to. And so these are concepts that we're talking about. It's a way of thinking about things. Maybe now we can get a little bit more concrete, Sahar, and share with people how we actually go about and do that. So I shared one nugget in terms of rapid transformational therapy, where we can go in and in 1, 2, or 3 sessions really dive in and get to those subconscious thought patternings and the stories that really bring us to have certain beliefs about ourselves. And then we get to a certain part of our lives where we say, well, I'm done with that. I need to shift that. And then we get to the how. And so RTT is one of those ways. Sahar, can you share with us another way that personally or professionally you use to shape the stories?
Yeah, so for myself personally, I use intentional creativity. It's a modality, it's a movement. I'm an intentional creativity coach and teacher. And we really talk a lot about story, and story lives in image and words and color, as Donna was saying earlier. And so we actually use those same principles, and we use it in an application way where we use painting as a way of, or metacognitive drawing as a way of accessing our stories, because sometimes your stories don't want to be revealed on a conscious level. So they reveal themselves as you engage in those modalities, because that sensor part of yourself is not there to protect you. Like, so your defenses kind of get dismantled and you have access to those deeper revelations. Because as Donna said, when she said she wasn't ready, a lot of the times when we're not ready, we don't want to know what we know, right? And we don't want to know what stories we're holding on to. And so for myself, I use that. Mindfulness meditation practices are also really big, because it creates that space. From a neuroscience perspective, it creates that space for you to make decisions and choices in a new way versus your autopilot. So we really are talking about this default network setting that we have. All humans, we have this default network setting that we create as from growing up as young kids and onwards. And the reason for that is actually your brain wants to be efficient. So it's like, when you learn how to ride a bike, or you learn how to drive a car, or you learn how to eat, or you learn how to walk, or you learn how to breathe, all of those functions take so much energy. But our structure, our being is made in such an intelligent way that it's like, okay, that training, that knowledge, that wisdom can go in the subconscious, because you'll still be able to recall it in terms of if you need to remember it, which Donna said, how we remember stuff. Um, but you don't want it to take up your conscious mind, because then your conscious mind could become available to you in the present moment, so you can do the daily functioning otherwise. And so I really want to say that we have this beautiful divine design that we have, but when we have more knowledge and awareness of how it works, then we know how to do that programming work in a conscious way. And so I think that that's the difference when we talk about evolution, is knowing that we all have stories, we all have imprinting, we all have programmings, but it's being conscious of being the storyteller inside of your being and choosing to say, I'm going to take the pen and I'm going to consciously write new stories. And for myself, when I identify, for example, in my painting processes, I'll identify 3 or 4 stories that I desire to like let go of or transmute, because they say energy can be created or destroyed, but it could be transformed. And so you want to pull the energy out of some of those beliefs, and then you want to put it into the new beliefs that you want to create. So I'm a really big advocate of that. I'm not so I don't know if that answers your question, Donna, but those are some of the strategies or methods that I use. I think with meditation, I started the meditation from a long time ago. So by now I'm a walking meditator. And what I mean by that is that, I can have that conscious presence internally at the same time being present externally to like my day-to-day errands. And I think it's a way of life, as you were saying. So it really is that. And so I would say meditation is also something really helpful to be, if you're somebody who's new on the path or new on the journey of self-discovery, self-awareness, and all of that, to do that. I also used a lot of therapeutic support. So when I first started, I had different therapy approaches. So I used to go to see somebody for dynamic psychotherapy, which really has to do with exploring those early imprinting stories and stuff like that. And then just talking it out and just discovering all of that helped me. So it all depends on where you're at on your path, I would say, in terms of what modalities or tools to use.
I want to share with our listeners too something really interesting that I saw in a coaching call yesterday with a powerhouse woman by the name of Deb Erickson. She's a business mindset coach. She runs the I Can Institute. She's phenomenal. So, for any entrepreneurs out there, especially women, because women are her main clientele, check out Deb Erickson. She's phenomenal. And so, I'm in one of her courses right now, and it's called I Can Overcome. And in one of the, and I mention all of this because I want to mention one of the key pieces that I learned yesterday in one of the modules, which was she held up these 2 mannequin heads and she said, this is Hilda, and Hilda is my subconscious mind. And I wish you could have the image, but Hilda looked like this really put together librarian type figure where every piece of hair was so neatly put together and tightly tied back. And then she had Tawanda was her name, which was her her conscious mind, and it was wild. And she had this mohawk of rainbow colored hair and leather clothing, and you name it, like feather earrings and all of this wild stuff. And so, what she wanted to show us with these 2 images was that we can use both. I'm going to summarize what was in 40 minutes in literally 2 minutes. We can use both of these parts of our mind, our conscious, which is that Tawanda Wild, woman that knows what she wants. Like, oh yeah, I want to achieve brilliance in my business, and I want to make $100,000 a year or a month, and I want to do all these things because absolutely it turns me on and it fires me up. And then there's our subconscious mind, and the one that was more put together because she's more tightly wound. And the subconscious are these old stories and patterning that we have. And maybe though, even though you want all of these things that Tawanda wants, she wants to go get it, and she wants to be the best in her business, and she wants to be the best mom and partner and all of these things. Then the subconscious comes in and says, well, do I really deserve that? Am I worthy of that? And all the old stories come in. And do I really believe I can do it? And so they fight one another. But what happens, Deb says, if we have these 2 organically working together in alignment? So, what happens if we become more aware and we start chipping away at the stories of the subconscious, and we start to reshape them, as we've been talking about in this entire podcast, and we start to change them in the way that actually suits our way of being now. So we're not victim to the old self, but we're actually strong in our character in this new self that we want to have. and we align subconscious and conscious to work together, because they're going to try and battle one another. The subconscious is going to try and hold you back because, exactly like you said, Sahar, the mind wants to revert back to comfortable ways of being, to ways of being that are much more regulated and ways that it knows, like riding a bicycle, like you said. It wants to do the familiar. The mind loves the familiar. But what if we align and we make the familiar the new way of being? And so then we start to align that subconscious self with the conscious self, and they can actually play together. And so it's a work in progress. It needs repetition. And, it's not an overnight success story. It's something that's going to take weeks and months, and actually, yes, years. But the shift can happen. The shift can happen immediately. We can have the aha moment and then put in the work to see the results going forward.
And it's also about, as you said, the shift can happen. It's looking at it as a way of life, I think really helps. And anytime you want to build a new structure, the same way that you had several years to have your mind imprint with the old beliefs, you're also going to be needing those. Not to say you need several years to be able to do that, but if you like, so I set a goal for myself in my early 20s of wanting to create a course for a college level. I thought, oh, that would be such a fantastic dream. And at that time, it looked huge to me. It looked like a huge endeavor. And I felt like if I achieved that goal, then, my whole spirit would be lit up, etc. And now, ironically, I work at a college where I've designed over 8 programs that have been working on over like 150 courses in the last 3 years. And when I look back, I'm like, wow, my early 20-year-old self really knew that she wanted this. And spirit, whatever you want to call it, really helped me on my path to get me here. And here I am, I've birthed that. That came out of me. And so I'm in this place of emptiness in a sense now again. And I'm like, what does my spirit and my soul desire now going forward in the next decade of my life? And so we just want to also say that it's not just your early childhood imprinting stories that you're also looking to undo. You're looking to undo things that you may have created in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 50s, just because of the simple fact that you've grown out of it. It might just be like, you have clothes in your closet and you're like, I really like that style 2 summers ago, but now I'm feeling a different style. And so we talk about the power of stories in that sense, that when you become the storyteller and you become conscious of the fact that you have some tools in your toolkit to know how to write your stories and how to change them and all of that, then it's like you're the artist of your life. And then it's just day-to-day practices, right? And so it's not something that's only burdensome in the sense of, oh my God, I have to go revisit my inner child stories again. They do matter. And a lot of the times we're not going to get into that topic right now, but I just also want to highlight epigenetics, where we get stories passed down to us subconsciously from our ancestors and our lineage, and we don't even know that they're not our own stories. So you may notice, like, for example, for myself, I used to feel a lot of anxiety around, relationships and stuff. And I'm like, where did this come from? Because it feels so overbearing, and I've been chipping at it for like a decade. And only recently did I realize, oh, I picked this up as a really little child from my mother's energy in terms of like her always feeling anxious. So when I was in the womb, she was anxious. And so there is that, like, whole dance that you have to do with your timelines of, exploring how deep you may want to go, but also that you can start with things that are really present in the moment for yourself. So it doesn't have to be like that hard, grungy work, although I am a big advocate of all of it, because the more we uncover, the more we dig up the old, the more we can work with it, the lighter you become, the more joyful you become, the more open you become to allowing that space of potential to fill you up with new ways of being, new stories, new ideas. And so that's why I love doing this work for myself, because that's where transformation lives. It lives within our stories. It lives within our minds. It lives within our beings. And as each single one of us does our own work, imagine the whole planet lights up with new stories. And I feel like that's how that systemic change is going to happen. That's how those structural changes happen. It's both and, but I find that as we do that inner work, we're really creating a ripple effect of change in our outer world, which is what supports the transformation on the planet as well, which is so needed and desired for at this time. And it can happen from a place of joy and delight and abundance and love and high vibrations. So yeah, that's where I would love to end this off, Donna.
I think it's a great space to end. And as you said, I'll just reiterate that so much change in stories, in a narrative is needed across the planet, across the globe, among all people. And the only place that it can start is within ourselves. So go do the work, people.
And it could be fun. And it could be fun. We're so excited to meet with you again next week for our next episode. And we hope you have a wonderful week.
See you next time. Bye, everybody.